Hello, and welcome to the Albright Scholar for February 2021. My name is John Pankratz, and each month it's my privilege to welcome BCTV viewers and residents of Greater Reading to take a glimpse inside our learning community up on North 13th Street, to look at the work being done by teachers and students, and to think about its impact on all of us. Well, it's February, and Albright is still at the end of an elongated interim term, a January term, which is now a January and February term. And we're on the eve of a spring semester that again is going to present challenges. We're dividing the semester in two 7-week segments to minimize contact between students and faculty, and yet continue with our educational mission. I'm here with one of my most creative colleagues who has been teaching in the interim and is looking forward to an exciting spring semester. Dr. Lawrence Morris is professor of English at Albright, and it's an absolute joy to have you here on the show, Lawrence.
Thanks so much, John, for inviting me. Hello to everyone out there in Reading.
Yes, good. Well, Lawrence, you've been at Albright now for really quite a while. I realize I think you were interviewed back in 2004, is that right?
That seems right. I think I've been here 15 years, yeah.
Right, and you were the successor to the redoubtable Michael Adams.
Yes.
Who you got to meet via Zoom when we bade farewell to Al-Qasi Sato.
First time. I'd heard many legends about him when I first came to Albright, so it was great to see him.
But you're a storied character as well, and you're fascinated by stories reaching back into the Middle Ages and the English tradition and the Gaelic tradition, and you brought so much of that alive to our students. You're teaching a course right now, which you've taught during the interim before, on folk tales.
That's right. I teach a standard general studies course. I usually teach it every interim or January semester. It's on folk stories and fairy tales. So I look at both oral folk stories as well as literary fairy tales. Some of the ones everybody knows, or at least they think they know, from the Grimm's brothers, but also other famous writers such as Basile, running from the Italian tradition, Perrault from the French tradition. And then we look at folk stories, which are a different kind of kettle of fish. And from those, folk stories look from the entire world. So we read stories from Ireland, of course, my area of specialty, but also from Africa, the Middle East, parts of Latin America, Australia. And one of the parts I actually love about their course is we watch a lot of storytellers perform. So we don't just read, but we watch. And so I don't know if you're familiar with the Medalik tradition in Turkey, but these are essentially kind of one-man story / shows performances, or we look at the Aboriginal Dreamtime story performances with didgeridoo and kind of full ritual paint on. It's really fantastic. Every week we look at a different part of the world and we watch a performance from that culture. And we try to, and then here's the part that's the challenge. That part's the fun part for the kids. And the challenge is that they have to try and incorporate some of these techniques in a story that they tell. So they watch a kind of style from part of the world, and then in their one of their textbooks called Dorson's Folk Tales from Around the World,
sure,
they choose a story that they're going to tell for their classmates. And they video themselves telling the story in their own words. They're not reading it, they're performing it. And every week they have a challenge to incorporate something we studied in those performances. So for example, in the Medalik, in the Turkish tradition, they use lots of props. They change their character voices dramatically and so the students that are challenged do the same thing, to think of props they can use, to think of how they can distinguish their characters from each other, to add a bit more drama into their performances. And those are my favorite part of the course, is watching the students kind of embrace that level of performance. And it's a good way for them to work on public speaking, because it's very easy, especially if you're a new public speaker, to kind of be afraid of doing something unusual or doing something big, grand gestures, right?
Yourself, yeah.
Yeah, they want to not be noticed, even though by definition, they're the one who needs to be telling everyone. They have to be the center of attention.
Yeah.
And so public speaking and trying to get them telling stories in a way that makes them push their boundaries, their comfort boundaries, being in front of people. It's great, I'd say, for a lot of our students. And it's scary. I don't want to underestimate how scary it can be for these students when they're telling their first stories, even though it's a very safe medium, like it's online, so we're doing it as recorded videos, but they're sharing them with their classmates, they're getting feedback from their classmates, they're getting feedback from the instructor. And that medium, it can be scary for new public speakers.
Now it's online. Are the students performing their tales online?
They are, but they're recording them, so they're not doing them live.
Oh,
So they're recording them, and they can use in our learning system. Canvas has a variety of ways of doing it. They can do it within Canvas, or they can even do it on YouTube and post a link from YouTube and share videos. And then their classmates will watch those videos and they'll give them feedback about this worked really well. Here's one thing you could work on, or we were thinking about this technique this week. You could incorporate that in this way in the videos. And then of course they get feedback from me, from the instructor.
I often talk in my own classes about the nexus between oral cultures and literate cultures.
Yeah.
And as writers, people, will be solitary and put things down and then send it out to a faceless, anonymous audience and hope that it clicks. But in oral performance, it really is a two-way form of communication. Even if the audience doesn't say anything, you're looking at them, you're looking at their eyes, you're noticing if they're falling asleep, you're noticing if they're aroused by your tale, and that encourages you to dig a little deeper into one aspect or another aspect as well.
It's kind of it's a group endeavor in some ways. Maybe there's one performer, but in reality, the performance is created by everyone there. Right. And online format, when you're recording it, it's not quite as dynamic, obviously. But we try and bring that in with having the feedback and watching everybody else's video. So it feels like a group project in that way. And and everybody enjoys it. For me as a teacher, I love watching the kids who come in with kind of like, they're going to read this, they're going to get it done. And they go from that level of just getting the task done to becoming performers who can make a story interesting and lively and capture your imagination and your interest. That's always a great pleasure. So although the story is about folk tales and it's about fairy tales, a really big aspect of it is about performance and public speaking and building up those skills that will go far beyond this course, that they'll be able to use throughout their whole lives.
And really will, in ways that they don't necessarily know or predict yet. Right?
Definitely.
All of a sudden they're leading a group at their place of employment, and they're the ones who are doing the presenting. They're the ones who are doing the organizing. They're the ones doing the motivating. And somehow they learn that during a January in a general education course that they had to take.
And that's how it works out. Everything adds up together. Throughout those 4 years is how you build up those skills. And while you're doing them, and these days when you're doing online courses, you have objectives. And sure, one of the objectives of this course is to improve public speaking, but you don't realize how these things take root. At the time, you're just telling a story that comes from West Africa, and you don't realize the other skills that it's building up in who you are.
Yeah. Oral culture, folk tales really have an incredibly important social function as well, particularly in societies that don't have written laws. The way you express norms, the way you model norms is by telling stories. And maybe you don't even tell stories about yourself. Maybe you tell stories about the selfish monkey or something like that. And yet we know that story is holding up certain morals and certain ethical standards that the entire community is asked to share.
Definitely.
And
we look at that in a variety of ways. One of the ways we look at that is through scholarly writing. So we look at some of Marina Warner's arguments about French folk culture and the roles that women played in passing on stories, and how many of these kind of classic stories, like Cinderella or Snow Beauty, can reflect Snow White. There we go. Can reflect tensions between women and female members in a household in a time where you had multiple generations, in which the wife was living in the same house as her mother-in-law, and
the stepmother.
You can see how the stepmother takes on a different meaning.
Poor old Hansel and Gretel. Oh my goodness. There are no happy families.
there's always tension and controversy. So we look at historical perspectives there through a scholarly lens and examining scholarly writings, but also just the storytellers themselves. You're probably familiar with the griot tradition of West Africa.
Yeah.
And we watch griot performances, and we watch them explain what they're doing and how they're interacting with their audience, not just preserving Mande stories and legends, but also how they continue to serve as a cultural resource for the communities in which they work. And it's really important, I think, for people to realize that that's one of the roles of the arts, is to preserve cultural memory and kind of allow people to express who they are, not just for themselves, but for their communities. And
Define
really
who they are in relationship to some very old and very deep traditions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we bring that all then, of course, to the Americas as well. We end up this week. We wrap up the course. It's been 6 weeks in this current interim, and we come back to America, and they'll be reading Appalachian folk stories this week, which is a very different style once again. But
Appalachia or the Ozarks?
Mostly Appalachia is the storytellers we're going to watch at any rate.
Over on my shelf there, I have a great book by Vance Randolph called Kissing in the Snow.
All right, yeah.
All of them are ribald and nasty and naughty, but they really do enforce a certain community's expectation and standard.
Yeah.
Oh, how great.
So, and of course, we've been doing a lot of writing as well. So they got their final papers coming up. So I'm sure they're sweating about that as we speak.
I'm sure. But that's all good for them too.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I know you're digging deep into the traditions of English literature in the first session of the spring semester as well. You're teaching a course on Beowulf.
We're teaching a course on Beowulf. This is an upper level course, English 350. It is also being trialed for general studies credit. So I'm going to be interested in seeing, for those people who aren't English majors, how that works out. And they're a good handful of them in that who aren't English majors. So I'm looking forward to that.
Very often, some of our very best students are science majors, but they want to dive into the humanities in a mysterious way.
That's been my experience as well. I mean, that's one of the great advantages of being in a small liberal arts school, is be able to take all these interesting courses in different fields and having the slots in your education to do that. Beowulf, it's we're going to read in Old English. So I'm not quite sure if the students have fully comprehended this yet, but we will be, week one, we're going to start learning the basics of Old English. Now, we are going to have translations in the background.
Our students think Oscar Wilde is Old English.
yes. But for the audience out there, if you don't know when Beowulf was written, the usual date is about 750 given for it. So there are a variety of dates, but this is genuinely Old English, 750 AD. And the English language has changed entirely. So you do have to approach Old English as a kind of foreign language. Mm-hmm. Once you get used to it, you start being able to recognize the patterns that enable you to see it as English, but that does take some time. And so we'll be reading the vast majority of the works in Old English in the course, large chunks of Beowulf in Old English, as well as other Old English poetry and some prose as well. Dream of the Rood, for example. We'll probably read The Wife's Lament in Old English. So that will be a challenge. And one of the goals of the course is to really focus closely on the text, because you could do a course like this that was just all done in translation, and you would learn a lot, mm-hmm. but you'd also miss a lot. And part of what I want to teach in these circumstances is how important language is to communication. The very medium you use is such a critical part of the message ultimately. And that goes also in my fairy tales course. When we watch Aboriginal Dreamtime stories, they're performing in their Aboriginal languages. I don't even put a translation at the bottom, because to me, the language is so incredibly central. Now, we also read versions of these in translation, so it's not just entirely foreign, but it's really important to me that students get a sense of the primacy of language in any kind of work of art. And that's one of the reasons why we're going to do a course on Beowulf. For me, we're definitely going to read a lot of it in the original Old English. It'll be a challenge, but I pick our resources carefully to make sure it's not too intimidating of a challenge. So there are lots of notes, commentaries, vocabulary help that helps them along the way. So it's as easy as it can be reading something that's 1,300 years old.
Right. Will that work okay in the 7-week semester in the compressed timeline?
It'll be tough. I'm optimistic. I've never taught it in that compressed time format before. Part of me thinks it might even work better because we're going to have longer sessions. Now this will be taught fully synchronously. That means we meet one-on-one, not one-on-one, one instructor in the entire class. Because it's in Zoom, everyone's in a little box. It kind of feels like one-on-one sometimes.
Right.
But we'll be meeting as a class. We're doing 3 times a week, so just shy of 2 hours, 3 times a week. And sometimes that longer chunk can mean you get a little bit more done in each chunk. It can give you a bit more time to reinforce the concept several times in the learning session. So I'm optimistic for that. I don't always teach synchronously online. So our online interim, the one in folk stories and folk tales, that's fully asynchronous.
Oh,
So that one has, the students can do the work more or less on their schedule. We don't meet at a particular time slot, but we do have daily deadlines. So every day there's a deadline, but the student can do that work anytime they want up into that deadline. This course is going to be different because I think for the kind of translation work we're going to start off with doing, you want to have more immediate input. Like you're going down the wrong road here. This is how you do it. Try again, and then see if they're getting it better. I think that's the way to go for this course, the synchronous meeting. So
it's almost a language course.
It is a large part of it.
You're going to make a response to that.
Having that to and fro is going to be really valuable. And so I'm optimistic that the longer time slot would actually end up being a benefit. Of course, it's always hard doing an intensive course for every student. That's going to be hard, regardless, I think, of what the course is. But I looked at the class list. I know I've got strong students in it, so I'm looking forward to it.
That's great. I always do that. I always check out my class lists, and I find a way to look forward to whatever I'm doing.
Yeah.
As well. Yeah, I'm looking forward to a nice spring semester as well. I'm teaching 2 courses in the first session, and then a synthesis course on food history in the second session. I know you're doing a synthesis course as well in session 2.
Pennsylvania Dutch. Pennsylvania Dutch is we do a little bit of food in that course as well. We look at Pennsylvania Dutch cuisine as part of the course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's actually one of my favorite courses I teach at Albright. I began it about, I think this is the 3rd year, maybe I've taught Pennsylvania Dutch. And
where did that come from? Your own background is not PA Dutch.
I'm not PA Dutch, no. But as you probably know, John, I speak Irish Gaelic fluently. I don't know if you know this or not. Yeah, you did, right? Yeah. And Irish literature in general, both English and Irish, is one of my research fields. I'm really a medievalist by training, so but I've written about some modern stuff as well, Yeats in particular. But Irish Gaelic, as you know, is a minority language. It's not endangered would be the wrong word because it has massive amounts of support within Ireland, but it's certainly in critical, let's say, a position within Ireland. And that's always made me interested in other smaller languages that are in a context dominated by a major global language. And Pennsylvania Dutch language is very much in that position. It's a small speaking community, completely surrounded by English, which is not only dominant in the US. I mean, English has now become the globally dominant language. And for that reason, it's very similar to Irish Gaelic and kind of its the way it operates as far as the kind of linguistic communities that are formed in it. So a few years ago, about 4 years ago, I thought I should be learning the local minority language here. I'm really interested in minority languages. I'm committed to them, but the place I'm committed to is 3,000 miles away. I should be involved in the one that's right here in my doorstep.
Yeah.
So I started doing, I took a course just at the local Berks County Historical Association, not the Historical Association, but the one over Tupahawken. What's that one called, John? The different name.
Berks Heritage.
Berks Heritage, there you are. Thanks for reminding me there. Berks Heritage with the fantastic Keith Brinsenhoff. I don't know if you know him, but he's a real personality. Mm-hmm. And he started me on that journey in language. And then, I'm a language person, really a philologist by training. My undergraduate was Latin and Greek, and I did all sorts of other languages too. So kind of night classes go a bit slow for me. Let's just put them that way. The important way for me to learn languages is to speak with native speakers of those languages. So after I knew the basics, and I worked through my own textbooks as well, From the library and other places. I basically started talking with Old Order Mennonites here in Berks County,
Mhm.
saying, I'm interested in having a weekly conversation with somebody. Do you know someone? And they pointed me to the great James Weaver, who has the farm where the Chili Pepper Festival is out in Bowers.
Yeah.
And so he and I would meet up weekly, and we developed a really nice friendship. And so my Dutch, my spoken Pennsylvania Dutch, just improved tremendously as a result of that. But that was how I got into Pennsylvania Dutch things, was thinking from the language aspect, thinking I I want to get involved in the local minority language. For me, that was Pennsylvania Dutch, and it took off from there into all kind of aspects. And so that's how I was interested in it. How I decided to do a bit more of it here at Albright, thinking about Pennsylvania Dutch culture, is that we are in what used to be the absolute heartland of Pennsylvania Dutch country. Yet a lot of our students don't even know that. They come from other places of the United States where they don't know much about Pennsylvania Dutch culture, and they associate it only with
Only
Lancaster
the
County
Amish.
Amish.
Yeah.
And Albright used to be an extremely Dutchy place.
Yeah, it really was Albrecht College.
It really was,
No.
until quite recently.
Mhm.
And and on our campus, not much is done in that area at the moment, thinking about that kind of heritage. So I wanted to bring that part of our history back into the conversation within our own institution, especially now that I had learned so much and my skills in language as well had increased in my knowledge of the culture. I wanted to take what I had learned and start sharing it back into our community. And particularly, I think it's great for everybody who takes the course and they always enjoy it. It does more than just talk about the Pennsylvania Dutch, of course. In many ways, synthesis courses, like from your course, they take strands of many different things and they blend them together in the study of culture. So we think about language. I've been going on quite a bit about language, but we think about religion. We think about how you even define ethnicities and what makes you something or something else. We talk about food cultures. We talk about artistic traditions. We take up all these kind of strands of human society, of human experience. Now, we happen to be applying it to Pennsylvania Dutch, but these are skills and thoughts that you could apply to any culture. I mean, it goes far beyond just the Pennsylvania Dutch. So it's useful for everybody, I think. I mean, sometimes
Your own life. How do I fit
yeah.
into a larger society?
How do I fit in?
Am I
How do I want to participate? Yeah, and because I like folk cultures, and part of the reasons including folk music, we look at music as well in the course, because the requirements for entry are a lot less than like professional level, and so like folk music, for example, before the recording era, there was tons of folk music, and kind of when we get the era of recording, you start thinking everything has to be professional, and the kind of bar for entry can be high. And you might be a good violinist, but you're nowhere near ready to and so people stop that interest. And for me, that's a real shame. I would like to encourage people to kind of embrace these aspects of folk culture and pursue them more actively. So that's another reason why I like exploring folk cultures, to encourage people to get involved in these activities without having to worry about being a professional at them. You can create interesting fraktur style pieces of art without saying, I'm going to become a professional doing this. It can be artistic expression, can be part of your life. And we do a lot of that in the course. So for example, we do small art pieces in the style of fraktur. Some students, they do it because they have to. Some students really love that outlet of being able to express their creativity. Same thing with food. We look at food ways, obviously not as much depth as you do in your food history course. But yeah, I've said a lot. I'm not sure if you want to follow up on any of that or go in a different direction.
I'm wondering, I assume in the past when this was a live course, you got to travel and tour and visit different sites. And
yeah, that is a really sad aspect of obviously the most tragic aspect of the current pandemic is the loss of life. But thinking about in terms of education, not being able to be on location for historical sites or historical events obviously takes a lot from it. We'll still do some, not class outings, but there still will be some field work involved
Okay.
in the course. One standard task I ask students to do, they can choose from kind of like a menu of class outings. And one of them is just to tour local graveyards looking at German tombstones, German language tombstones and English language tombstones, and looking at evidence of when that changeover occurs as
Mhm.
far as monumental markers. And then if there's artwork, of course, looking for artwork as well. As a lot of our listeners probably know, at least the vast majority of small, older churches in this area in Berks County will have German language tombstones, right? And sending students out to explore this kind of transition of language through this one particular kind of medium, which is grave markers,
Mhm.
it's an interesting experience. I mean, I like touring graveyards for many different reasons. One of them being artistic, one of them being the kind of the sense of history they entail, and for me as a believer as well, they're kind of places of I suppose hope for the coming resurrection. But students often haven't done this at all, and the first time they kind of visit and tour a cemetery can be, well, it's an experience. I'm not going to say it's life changing, but it can be a meaningful experience
Right.
where they're encountering a kind of tangible sense of history.
And I think too, it's a safe way to
And it's safe, thinking about the pandemic. Yeah.
as well.
Because just down here from campus, 2 blocks away, Alsace Lutheran has some gorgeous Revolutionary War tombstones. That's a very safe campus outing for an individual student to go on and explore those. And they have some, and some of those early late 1700 tombstones are decorated as well. So they're beautiful artwork as well.
Right.
So that's an example of a very safe outing. So we'll definitely keep doing that one.
Oh, how wonderful. This sounds great. I assume that you're not going to be able to Zoom with any Amish residents of.
We won't be able to Zoom for obvious reasons, unfortunately.
Right.
But and it's a shame because just last year I was teaching this course, and I'd lined up for our students to come visit the farm of some of my Amish friends in Lancaster County.
Mhm.
And then the pandemic struck, and it's like, unfortunately, we're going to have to cancel this. But yeah, once COVID ends, I'm looking forward to those activities resuming once again, because
I think
talking with people.
all are. There's no question. And as you know, I've gotten my first dose of the vaccine. I'm looking forward to dose number 2, and
Yeah.
and growing herd immunity on the part of all the citizens of the world.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to my first dose. Definitely, the more we can do to help end this crisis, that would be good. And I mean, not just for my own part, but of course to protect others as well.
Yeah, and keep society functioning.
Yeah, it's important for our students.
There's so much good work that needs to be done, and can only be done when we're really together.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I think we've come to about the end of our half hour here, Lawrence, but this has been scintillating. We could have gone on for several more
We could have gone on.
programs, and maybe we'll have to have you again sooner than after 15 years. And we can talk more about aspects of literature, about the English major at Albright, about our students as well.
I'm always happy to talk about the English major, so anytime.
In the future. We'll look forward. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
For being with us, and thank you all for tuning in to watch our program. I hope it's left you informed and inspired. We'll see you again in another month's time on another edition of The Albright Scholar. So long.